Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome in to the GSMC Football Podcast right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Bryce Lewis, and today we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about just any news and notes that's coming out of the NFL, really. We're also going to talk about college football as they've released their practice schedule that they've passed on what they have to see and what has to happen for teams to be able to play games. So obviously we're going to discuss that on the podcast, and we're going to talk about obviously things still going on in the world because it's affecting the NFL world, how players are feeling, other things. Also Colin Kaepernick, we're going to talk about him as well. We're really just going to talk about all types of things today. So, just stay tuned. You know what we do here. I try to give you all the updates and latest news on anything and everything football. So I'm gonna try to do that, and we gonna go ahead and get into it. So the NFL obviously has been called out, judged. They've been challenged by players, for what they did to Colin Kaepernick years ago. Roger Goodell recently came out saying that they were wrong, and they shouldn't have done that, and they were on the wrong side of it. So now everybody's looking at the NFL and saying, okay, what are you going to do with everything that's going on right now? What are you going to do to show us that you truly care and that you truly want change just as much as the players, just as much as the people in the world do? When the NFL is trying to do something, they're trying to do something is the key word. And it's a start. The NFL is pledging over $250 million over 10 years to support the black community. And coming from an article off Bleacher Report, the NFL announced Thursday it's planning to donate $250 million to combat systematic racism and support the battle against the ongoing and historic injustices faced by African Americans. In a statement released by the NFL, I'll read that statement to you. They say, and I quote, "The NFL is growing our social justice efforts through a 10-year total $250 million fund to combat systematic racism and support the battle against the ongoing historic injustices faced by African Americans. The NFL and our clubs will continue to work collaboratively with the NFL players to support programs to address criminal justice reform, police reform, and economic and educational advancement. In addition to the financial commitment, we will continue to leverage the NFL network and all of our media properties to a place of an increased emphasis on raising awareness and promoting education of social injustice issues to our fans to help foster unity. #inspire change." So like I said, the NFL is doing this. They're trying to do their part, donate their part to help out. And listen, like I said, we'll see how it pays off over the next few years. But like I said, this is a start for the NFL, and honestly, that's really all you want right now. It's just a start. Give me something to work with. Give me something that I can still look forward to. Give me something that I know I can progress forward and use in the future. So this is something that the NFL has, and they can now use this to their advantage and see what happens. Continuing on, the undefeated Jason Reed first reported on the move and added it expands the initial deal owners struck with the players' coalition that likely would have surpassed $100 million during its term. In the wake of killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, among others, Americans and others around the world have publicly demonstrated to seek meaningful action regarding police brutality and systematic racism. On May 30th, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell released his first statement after Floyd's killing by Minneapolis police. Obviously, this is a statement that Roger Goodell said about what happened. And this is what Roger Goodell said right here, and I quote, "The NFL family is greatly saddened by the tragic events across our country. The protesters' reactions to all these incidents reflect the pain, anger, and frustration that many of us feel. Our deepest condolences go out to the family of Mr. George Floyd and to those who have lost loved ones, including the families of Miss Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Louisville. Some people say Louisville. Doesn't matter to me. Whatever. But anyway, and Mr. Arbery, the cousin of Tracy Walker of the Detroit Lions. As current events dramatically underscore, there remains much more to do as a country and as a league. These tragedies inform the NFL's commitment in our ongoing efforts. There remains an urgent need for the part of the fabric of the American society. We embrace that responsibility, and we are committed to continuing the important work to address those systematic issues together with our players, clubs, and partners." Now, obviously, a lot of people felt like that statement first when he released that, when he did, fell flat because of what happened with Colin Kaepernick. But obviously, like I said, Goodell said that the league didn't do enough to support the players. And now I think the NFL is just like, and like a lot of companies probably people feel like they're kind of being forced to do more, but they're doing something. And that's what I think people want. They just want them to do something. They want them to give us something. And I think this is that thing that, like I said, is a start for them moving forward and doing something that people want. So we'll have to see how that goes moving into the future, I would say. Because like I said, the NFL has really put themselves in a tough position right now, with their players kind of feeling like our league, we don't even know if our league's fully behind us. In the NBA, with the players, their league's behind them. And other leagues are trying to do the same. NFL, since it's also one of the few leagues that's majority black, you really hope that the league that you're playing for is behind you and supports your cause and social activism. And they won't condemn you or look at you differently for it either, like they did Colin Kaepernick. Because obviously, like I said, we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick later on, but I believe Colin Kaepernick still deserves another opportunity at least. And I think that is something that is definitely needed. At least give him a chance, give him a fighting chance, give him a tryout, let him have a chance to make the team, any of that. That's really all we want from that situation, or issue a public apology like Malcolm Jenkins said to this man, because he is definitely deserving ever since that day that he was released by the 49ers and did not come back of an apology from the league. But coming up next, Dalvin Cook is holding out. Is it wise? Someone is interested in Colin Kaepernick. Who? And John Harbaugh is not happy with the NFL. All that here and more on the podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment we discussed the NFL donating $250 million to black communities to help social injustice and the racism that we face in this country. I said that is a start for the NFL, as it is something that, like I said, the players have questioned from the NFL for years. Are you behind us on these issues, or do y'all view it the same way as the other side? And the NFL is trying to show to their players and to the world that we support you. We were wrong with Colin, even though they haven't actually publicly acknowledged that they were wrong with Colin, and basically tried to make up for it at the end of the day. But now we're going to get some NFL news and topics. So Dalvin Cook is holding out. He is going to hold out against Minnesota. He's looking for, as they reported, Christian McCaffrey type money. So, obviously, Dalvin Cook obviously is one of the driving forces of this Minnesota offense. When he's in the lineup, the offense is much better. Kirk Cousins is much better. The passing game is much better. Everything just goes as Dalvin Cook goes in a way. So you would think in that situation, well, he's a pretty important player if he is one of the reasons why your offense can even be good or is good. So now, but the question is, with everything that's gone on, is this the right time to be holding out? That's, I think, the question here. Is this the right time for them to be trying to hold out? That is a real question. That is a real question. Because the thing about it is, first, obviously the running back position, obviously we've talked about it, has been devalued. It's not as important. It is looked almost kind of down upon to pay a running back a lot of money, regardless of how good he is. Because running backs wear out. You're worried, are you going to get the same running back that you paid for? Is the wear and tear in his body going to wear him out already? Things like that. And Dalvin, he's had some injuries. Obviously, 2 years ago, he had the injury that kept him out for the rest of the season. But when he has played, he is definitely one of the better backs in this league. I feel like Minnesota is in a position where they probably feel like we don't have to really go out of our way to pay him. Because, listen, they have some running backs behind him that played decent or well when he was out for a couple of games. Obviously, they're not Dalvin, but I think that's one reason why you don't see teams pay running backs, because if they feel like we can get close to or good enough running back play from our other guys, even if our star is not out, they're going to use that as a justification of why we should pay you. Because you got to think about it. You have to think about it. You have to see it like this. If I lose a quarterback and he's my franchise guy, unless you just have a really, really good backup, a lot of times it's a drop off. So, and You just went from maybe a potential Super Bowl contender to maybe eliminating the first round, maybe not making the playoffs. Just depending on the quarterback. Wide receiver. You lose your number one guy, and let's say all the other receivers have been able to be productive because of the coverage shifting towards him. Now imagine if now he's not there, and then they don't play, and they're not productive, and they're struggling. It'll justify paying him a lot of money. Running back, it's just, yeah, we're great when you're in the lineup. You help us be who we are as an offense. You help us reach our potential. But if you were hurt, it won't necessarily change our chances in terms of if we could win this game, if we could make it to the Super Bowl, if we could be still a great team. Like, in the grand scheme of things, running back is viewed as, okay, yeah, it's great and everything, but it's not a make or break for us. It's not something that we look at and think, oh man, if we lost our running back, our season is over. Because honestly, teams really don't want that. They don't want their season to ride on the fact if a running back is healthy or not. Every team's season usually rides on if your quarterback is healthy. That's usually what your team rides on. So that's going to be probably the big thing there. And so I think that's going to be the thing that really stands out with the running back room and why running backs will get paid. And that's why I think Dalvin might be in a situation where he's not going to get the money he wants because of that, because they just view it like, I mean, we're not that much worse without you in the lineup with the running backs that we have. So if you want to hold out, okay. Now listen, doesn't mean he still can't get a contract out of this or anything, but they're definitely not going to sit here and feel like, if we don't want to pay you Christian McCaffrey money, we're not going to pay you Christian McCaffrey money. And I'm sure the NFL, that's how they feel about that. Because they know, or not the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings specifically, but a lot of teams in the NFL probably feel that exact same way. We have to understand, Christian McCaffrey, you know, he literally is an anomaly to me because he does everything. He can catch 80 balls, 800 yards or whatever, 60 balls, and then rush for over 1,200 and 300 carries. Like, he's kind of one of those unique players who kind of does everything for a team. So you can't necessarily say, you know, oh, you're just as valuable as Christian McCaffrey, because it's not like you do everything for Minnesota. You don't remember, Minnesota last year had 2 number 1 receivers. So you weren't necessarily needed in the passing game. I mean, Carolina has DJ Moore, which is fine, but I mean, realistically, their offense really was not going to be doing anything unless Christian McCaffrey had a big day. Even in blowouts, he was having a big game. So clearly we know Christian McCaffrey's sport. Dalvin, literally, if he doesn't do everything for them, even though he can make the argument, the team runs through me, our offense runs through me because we don't maximize our potential as a team unless I'm running and I'm efficient and I'm punishing defenses or breaking off long runs. But I mean, you have to look at also the case again. Every offense wants to be that way. Every offense wants the run first to set up the pass offense. If you have an effective running game, linebackers cheat, and then after that, you can get them over the top with play action. So Dalvin's in a tight situation. It's going to be hard for him to convince Minnesota to pay him that kind of money. If this is something he's willing to actually sit out of, we'll see, because it's still the beginning stages of it. But if it is something that really can get really deep for him, we'll have to see, because Minnesota definitely knows at the same time they're not necessarily the same offense without Dalvin Cook in the lineup. So we'll have to see what they actually end up deciding to actually do. But coming up next, we're going to get to those stories I talked about. John Harbaugh not being happy with the NFL and somebody being interested in Colin Kaepernick and other stories right here on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the NFL and Dalvin Cook, as Dalvin Cook is deciding to hold out for the Minnesota Vikings. And we basically just discussed, is it wise for him to do that, and why the running back position has been devalued, and so that could hurt Dalvin Cook when it comes to holding out for more money, especially Christian McCaffrey money. Especially, and also, I also mentioned with everything going on as well, is this just the best time to do this? You know, we'll see though. If Dalvin Cook's willing to miss some games or miss camp or miss preseason, we'll see. We'll see. We'll have to see if this is something he's really serious about, like, no, pay me more, or he's like, okay, it's fine. I don't have to get paid that money. I'm fine. I'll take it. I'm okay with it. We'll figure it out next offseason. So we'll have to see. But going back to some more news and notes around the league, Pete Carroll, the last team and the last coach to ever give Colin Kaepernick a workout, I believe, in their actual team facilities, was the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's already came out and said he regrets not signing Colin Kaepernick back in 2018. As I remember, they brought him in for an interview and they were interested in bringing him as a backup quarterback, but they decided not to go in that decision. He did say, though, that the protest had nothing to do with that. So, Pete Carroll has now said that a team and a GM have called him about Colin Kaepernick because he was the last person to work with Colin. And all he said to Joe Fan of NBC Sports Northwest was, someone is interested. And this is coming also from an article. Now, obviously, in this article, it says Carroll did not elaborate on his conversation, and it's unclear if the coach and general manager have been in contact with Kaepernick. So, obviously, he's keeping it, close to the vest. He's not going to say too much. Conversations surrounding Kaepernick's continued unemployment have increased over the last few weeks since George Floyd's May 25th killing and subsequent nationwide protests over police brutality and systematic racism. Kaepernick began kneeling during the national anthem during the 2016 season to protest those same systematic issues. His form of protest polarized the NFL fan base, with some applauding Kaepernick for standing up for racial injustice and others taking offense as what they viewed as disrespecting the flag. Despite the fact Kaepernick came up with the idea alongside Nate Boyer, a former Army Green Beret, the NFL attempted to distance itself from the players kneeling during the anthem on several occasions, including attempting to ban it altogether in 2018. The ban never took effect after it drew national criticism and outcry from players. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell recently said the league was wrong for attempting to stop peaceful protests in the past. Goodell said, "We, the National Football League, condemn racism and systematic oppression of black people." Goodell said in a video posted on Friday, "We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong and for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all players to speak out and peacefully protest." Obviously, the league's reputation was hurt by the way they handled Colin Kaepernick. So clearly, trying to redeem themselves is interesting. But I really do hope that Colin does get another chance. I feel like he's been staying in shape. He's been ready, and he just wants a chance. He just wants an opportunity. And you can't be against someone who just wants an opportunity. And I think someone like that, he should be able to get that opportunity. Because like I said, he didn't do anything violent. He didn't do anything bad. He didn't do any crime. He just protested social injustices that have came to light today. And so he deserves an opportunity to redeem himself. He deserves an opportunity to get back into it and have a chance to be able to be a part of the league that he loves and play the sport that he loves the most. And I think that's the most important thing. But, moving on. The Ravens and coach John Harbaugh, very critical of the NFL's memo sent out about what to do following the NFL reopening guidelines. And I quote in this article, Baltimore Ravens head coach John Harbaugh has some harsh words for the NFL in the wake of the league's latest memo outlining how franchises should continue going about reopening their facilities amid the coronavirus pandemic. Obviously, John Harbaugh tuning in and speaking on 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore. Harbaugh called the guidelines humanly impossible to follow. Obviously, in a tweet that was sent out by Aaron Keniz, sorry if I said your name wrong, he's obviously probably a part of the 105.7 The Fan. Harbaugh said, to be quite honest with you, it's impossible what they're asking us to do. Humanly impossible. Continuing on, last Sunday, the NFL and the Players Association sent each team instructions for how to fully open facilities up to players. Previously, teams were only permitted to have no more than 75 total at their offices at one time, while coaches were initially restricted from entering the building and players receiving medical treatment could access their team's campus. The memo, written by Roger Goodell, with the input from the NFLPA, Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, Duke's Infectious Control Network, and other hosts of health officials, called for the requirement of players to wear masks, remain 6 feet apart, undergo daily screening before entrance is permitted to team facilities, among other regulations. Harbaugh had trouble imagining how this would play out in practice, specifically noting players won't stay 6 feet apart in huddles and wondering if athletes can only shower one at a time. These are things that the league and the PA need to get a handle on, Harbaugh said. Players are not currently required to return to their facilities, and there is no timeline in place for such a direction by the league. Training camps, however, are still a go for the late July, with preseason scheduled to begin on August 6th, though the number of expedition games this season is currently under review. In the meantime, Goodell's memo and regulations he included are subject to change as new information becomes available. Harbaugh is hoping that the case as he continues to work through the league's latest recommendations. Harbaugh then said, good people, smart people are involved, but the way I'm reading these memos right now, you throw your hands up and you go, what the heck? So obviously John Harbaugh having strong words about what the NFL is doing. I mean, listen, it's going to be tough, implementing these regulations and restrictions. And like I said, obviously if John Harbaugh is saying it, the players may feel the same way. We'll have to see how it all plays out when they actually all get into camp together, when camps actually start, and seeing how they handle all the regulations and rules, and if anything actually changes between now and then. Coming up next, the NFL may shorten their preseason. Todd Gurley passes his physical for the Falcons. We'll talk about all that here and more on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the NFL. John Harbaugh not being happy with the NFL about the memo, all the things that they want the teams to do when they go back for camp. Harbaugh calling it humanly impossible to do it. So obviously he is not a fan of these regulations, thinking it feels just like it's impossible to do this, and I don't know why they're trying to. So obviously that was a big deal for him going into it. And you know what? He has a point. He has a point, in my opinion. And we shouldn't be critical of him. We shouldn't be critical of him at all. He's just doing what he felt like was best. And he's just doing what he had to do. But continuing on to this segment, the NFL and NFLPA reportedly discussing shortening the 2020 preseason from 4 to 2 games. Article from Adam Wells states, the NFL and the NFL Players Association are reportedly considering cutting the preseason schedule in half. Obviously, if you want context, first, people have already been asking for the NFL to cut their preseason down. I believe in the new collective bargaining agreement they agreed to, preseason games are now going to be 3 games after this year. They were going to be 3 games after this year. So it was definitely something that was going to be over very soon. And now they're saying we might just go ahead and make it 2. Which I think would be smart. You know, with everything happening, I feel like the NFL definitely would want to reduce, the practices and the games like that. Honestly, what that can make actually interestingly happen is if you shorten it, then you got to kind of change the preseason schedule up a little bit. So if we cut it out, do we have preseason games later? So then maybe teams can start camps later? Or do you keep everything the same? You still start camp the same way. You just don't actually have an actual game till later. Do you do something potentially where you have the games still first to second week, and then you just don't have any games for a couple of weeks and teams can just practice because of social distancing? I mean, there's some routes they could go if they actually go ahead and decide to do the 2 games instead of the 4. So it'll be interesting to see what direction that they feel like is best to go in when it comes to preseason and etc. So I think that's something that we'll have to see about. But continuing on, per NFL Network's Tom Pezzero, even though there are no decision that has been finalized or is intimate, the league and the union are discussing shortening the preseason to 2 games. The NFL has already announced their schedules for 4 preseason games, but Pezzero noted shortening the expedition season would give the league a longer ramp-up period to the regular season. One key element mentioned would be allowing medical experts to finalize game day protocol for testing. Other procedures and other procedures that will be in place. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has said that the league is operating as the 2020 regular season will start on time at this very moment. NFL PA Executive Director DeMaurice Smith wasn't as definitive as Roger Goodell during a recent appearance on HBO's Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. When he asked how confident he is on a scale of 1 to 10 that the season will be played, Smith said, well, UVA, which is University of Virginia, I believe, log rated on a curve, I'm probably going to go with 6-7. The preseason is scheduled to kick off with the Hall of Fame game between the Dallas Cowboys and Pittsburgh Steelers on August 6th. And the Pro Football Hall of Fame reopened Wednesday after closing March 16th because of the coronavirus pandemic. So, we'll have to see what they decide to do. I think, with every, I think it'd be smart maybe to do the shortening of the preseason games just so if you still have to travel, you can limit that for players, you can limit that for the teams, you can lessen the contact. So basically you're only going to contact 2 other teams during that whole time, obviously with the testing protocols and everything. And it honestly could just make everything a much safer situation if they decide to go in that direction. So I definitely think that's something that they should definitely heavily look into, consider, and just try to do. So I think that's something that they definitely will look into and try to do. So we'll have to see if they actually go ahead and pull the trigger and cut the preseason from 4 to 2 games. Also, in other news, Todd Gurley from the Atlanta Falcons finally gets his physical with the Falcons and passes his physical, so now he is cleared and ready to go in terms of his contract. Noting he still is owed money by the Rams for money that was left on his guaranteed deal that he signed with them before. Todd Gurley obviously signing with the Falcons this offseason, looking to be the number 1 feature back for the Falcons after letting go of Devontae Freeman last year. Gurley looking to bounce back and prove himself, prove that he is ready, prove that he is still that running back that we all loved, that dominated the league when he came into the league, and doing it in his hometown of Atlanta, where he played at UGA in Athens, Georgia. So that obviously would be very, really big if he could pull that off and do that as well. And like I said, the Falcons are in a very interesting situation this year. They're the 3rd team in the NFC South that people are predicting the 3rd team. People are predicted to be 7-9, 8-8. And we don't really know what the Falcons will be. They have the talent to play with some of the top teams, but we don't know if they're actually going to be a top team. That's a lot of speculation and uncertainty there. So we're going to have to see what comes out of it, what happens. Todd definitely, like I said, is looking to bounce back, looking to prove himself, looking to show people that he is still that guy. He is still Todd Gurley. He is still very impressive, and he's still very skilled. And so I'm sure he's going to do what he has to do out there to be the best he can be and make them not regret signing him and giving him another chance to still prove to people that he can still be that running back that people think he's not anymore. So we'll have to see what happens with Mr. Gurley when it comes to his future and his season with the Atlanta Falcons. Coming up next, the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry have had positive talks about a new deal, and Gronk is not considered a threat by defenses in the NFL this year. Very interesting, I'd say. All that here and more right here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey!
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the NFL. And that they may shorten the actual preseason. They might cut it to 2 games instead of 4. You know, to help maybe give them a bigger ramp-up period. And I also listed other reasons why they may also be willing to do this. And I also talked about Todd Gurley passing his physical for the Falcons. Obviously, because that was a big deal for them. Obviously, that's something that's kept a lot of players from doing, actually, during COVID pandemic. Which is the passing of the physical for a lot of people because they don't have a chance to actually pass the physical. So, obviously, we'll have to see how all that works out and hope for the best. But now we're going to continue on with the news. Derrick Henry. Titans have had positive contract talks. GM John Robinson has said. Article at Bleacher Report, Ron Goldberg wrote it. And I quote, Tennessee Titans general manager John Robinson said Thursday he had positive calls with representatives for the star running back Derrick Henry over the last 2 weeks. And I will also add in this, for some people who may be thinking that the Dalvin Cook situation is different or the same, Derrick Henry also has a case. If he didn't play, or if he was hurt, you do realize they wouldn't have won those 2 playoff games unless Tannehill somehow would have lit it up. So, Derrick Henry has kind of shown it, even though, again, you would still be hesitant as a GM to pay Derrick Henry, especially since he's getting closer to 30 or at 30 and giving him a big deal. So, obviously, Tennessee is being very careful about this process probably and how much money they're going to give him and how they're going to lay it out actually in the contract on how to give him the money. But I continue. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Derrick is an important part of what we do, Robinson added. Per John Glennon of Sports Illustrated. Just trying to find a spot where we all need to be and where we all want to be. The Titans used a franchise tag on Derrick Henry for the 2020 season, which will pay him $10 million on a 1-year tender. The two sides have until July 15th to reach a deal on a multi-year extension. Or Henry could become a free agent in 2020. Henry was as good as anyone in the NFL at his position last year, leading the league with over 1,500 yards rushing and 16 touchdowns. He totaled 896 rushing yards in his final 6 games of the regular season, and then kept it up in the playoffs with 446 yards in 3 games. The challenge will be locking up Henry on a long-term deal. Although he has indicated his willingness to remain with the team. Now, Derrick Henry has already came out and said publicly he wants to stay with the Tennessee Titans. His reason? He says, they are the ones that took the chance on me. 31 teams passed on me. on the draft, and they selected me. I have a lot of love for people in Tennessee. I have a lot of love for everybody in the organization. So Tennessee has to make the deal worth it for both sides and work for both sides, clearly. According to Nick Shook of NFL.com, 9 of the top 10 rushers from last year were on their rookie deals. So as you also can tell with that statement, a lot of good running backs, a lot of running backs that are up and coming, a lot of running backs that are really being the top of the league were all on the rookie deals. You're not actually seeing the big pay running backs leading the league in rushing. You're seeing the rookie running backs lead the league in rushing. But continuing on, the only exception was Dallas Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott, as he held out for an extension before the season. Long-term deals for running backs always come with a risk, especially with somebody who had a league-high 303 carries in 2019. The Titans also used their third-round pick on running back Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State. Both sides are hoping clearly for a deal, but there is no guarantee that they will actually reach one. And I think that they should definitely look into, giving Derrick Henry what he wants. Derrick Henry is very important. Derrick Henry is he is the engine that makes Tennessee go. And I think everybody knows that. But obviously, like I said, league high carries. He's also a little older. Remember, he's not coming out of his rookie deal. And Derrick Henry knows that, people are going to have questions. Can we trust him to be healthy? Can we trust him to still be the Derrick Henry that got us to the AFC Championship game? And I think that's going to be a question that Tennessee is going to have. But at the same time, they know, hey, we're not going to get anywhere if we don't have him either. So that's the dilemma that they're facing at the very moment. But now we're going to get to our next story, that NFL defenses do not look at Rob Gronkowski as a high priority to defend this year. Article from Scott Pollock. Please report. And I quote, Rob Gronkowski is 31 years old and didn't play it down in the NFL last season. Opposing defenses apparently aren't as worried about him as they once were. Now that he's joined the Tampa Bay following his hiatus, in terms of being a threat or concern, from what I can gather in my conversations, it is not a high priority. ESPN's Deanna Risen said on Thursday's Get Up, they know that he's vertical, he's long, and he's going to run those seams. Obviously, we know Gronkowski from his days and years in New England. Obviously, winning 3 Super Bowls and being selected to 4 All-Pro teams and 5 Pro Bowls. Obviously, very touted career, very impressive career Rob had while he's with the Patriots. He and Tom Brady formed arguably the best tight end quarterback duo in league history, taking advantage of mismatches where safeties were too small to defend the 6'6" Gronkowski and linebackers were not too quick to keep up down the field. Obviously, Brady is a 6-time champion, a 3-time NFL MVP, but is also 42 years old and coming off a 2019 campaign that saw him struggle at times. His 24 touchdowns were the fewest for the full season since 2006, and New England's defense carried the team for the entire year. Really, they feel like it's all about hitting him. It's all about getting him to the ground. He's not as dynamic in the pocket anymore. In terms of them as a duo, yes, they're still going to be a threat, but this is not the Tom Brady or the Rob Gronkowski we've seen in years past, according to the defensive coordinators that I have talked to. So obviously people are not taking them maybe as seriously as they should. Could that come back to bite them? I don't know, but it might. It might. We'll have to see. But that's all we have here for this segment. Coming up next, We're going to talk some college football and more NFL news right here on the podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Last segment, we discussed the NFL. Titans, Derrick Henry, have had some positive talks on contract negotiations. They feel like they have been progressing slowly but quietly on and being closer to getting a deal done between the two sides. Obviously, Derrick Henry being their star running back, that's extremely important to make sure he's locked up so you can have your full team back, the AFC Championship team, from the offensive perspective, and get ready to try to see if you can prove people that wasn't just a fluke. Also, Rob Gronkowski is not considered a threat by many NFL defenses, as they feel like both him and Brady aren't the same player they were when they were dominating in New England. So people don't view them as big of an issue or as big of a situation or a problem, so to say, as they used to be together. But now moving on to the latest news in our little final segment, college football. The NCAA reportedly passes recommended college football practice return dates among pandemic. We're going to talk about it right here, Bleacher Report article, discuss it right here. And I quote, the NCAA Football Oversight Committee has recommended that college football coaches be allowed to begin working with players July 13th. Amid a restructured preseason schedule due to COVID-19 pandemic. That date, or the date, would be moved to July 6th for teams whose seasons are scheduled to start in week 0 on August 29th, including opponents California and UNLV, among others. Those sessions beginning July 6th or 13th would consist of strength training, film study, and can be held up to 8 hours per week. On July 24th, teams may begin holding a transitional form of practice that has been discussed by the group as being comparable to NFL OTAs, as those include walkthroughs and a ball. Those sessions can be held up to 20 hours per week. Training camp would then begin August 7th. The NCAA Division I Council must approve the dates set forth by the NCAA Football Oversight Committee, but is expected to do so following a vote scheduled for Wednesday. Teams have been allowed to hold voluntary workouts since June 1st, after the NCAA lifted or moratorium on athletic activities. The NCAA has also canceled spring and summer championships. The 2020 college football season is scheduled to begin Saturday, August 29th with 6 games. That slate initially included Notre Dame versus Navy in Dublin, but that game will be rescheduled and played in Annapolis, Maryland, at another date, likely Labor Day weekend, which is September 5th or 6th. The Week 1 slate is set to begin Thursday, September 3rd, and run through Monday, September 7th. So as you can tell, NCAA going through it, trying to get things right, trying to put the best day forward, put the best things forward, and doing what they need to do to be successful. Which, listen, again, these are college kids. You don't want to put these kids at risk. Because not only are you going to hear from them, you're going to hear from their families. And that wouldn't be necessarily good for NCAA to have any more bad publicity because of how they're already viewed in the public eye anyway. Also, from the college football landscape, SEC Media Day will be virtual this year. And another article in the Bleacher Report by Adam Wells. The SEC's annual Media Day event will take place this year, but it will be held virtually due to the coronavirus pandemic. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey announced that the change in a statement released on Wednesday. And I quote in this statement, "Conducting football media days in a virtual format will provide us the opportunity to manage the event in a healthy manner as we continue to be impacted by COVID-19. And we will provide flexibility for our programs to adjust their preparation for the 2020 football season, according to the preseason calendar that is expected to be expanded due to the cancellation of spring football season. We look forward to returning to our traditional media days formats in 2021. According to the SEC's announcement, Sankey's State of the SEC address will be a part of the virtual event. All 14 head coaches, as well as some players from each team, will be made available to speak with reporters. One of the sites for the event was going to be the College Football Hall of Fame, but the building has been closed since March 16th due to COVID-19. And the original dates this year in the SEC Media Days was July 13th through 16th, but the schedule for the virtual event will still need to be determined. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that, obviously. So if you're interested in that, you're going to probably have to watch it virtually online and see what all your players from the SEC and your team and how they view on their outlook of the season coming up. But that's all we have here, right here on the GSMC Football Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever platform you're listening to us on, leave a comment. We always definitely love your feedback. Don't forget to listen to our other amazing podcasts here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Bryce Lewis signing out. Have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.